We ran it on QI a few years ago.
Yeah.
Which was, there's no such thing as a fish.
You mean there's no such thing as a fish?
No, seriously, it's in the Oxford Dictionary of Underwater Life. It says it right there, first paragraph, no such thing as a fish.
Hello, welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast coming to you from the QI offices in Covent Garden. My name is Dan Schreiber. I'm sitting here with Andy Murray, James Harkin, and Anna Chazinski. And once again, we've gathered around the microphone with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. So here we go, in no particular order. Let's do it. James, fact number 1.
My fact this week is that in the 17th century there was a prophet called Dorothy Harling who would cure you of your sins by urinating on the afflicted part of your body.
Wow.
When you've got a sin, what's the afflicted part of your body?
Well, if you'd been swearing, it could be your mouth.
Right, okay.
Dear.
If you'd stolen something, it could be your hands, I
Your
guess.
Okay.
If you thought a
Yeah.
dirty thought,
Your brain.
should piss in your
Into
ear.
your ear.
She would whip people first. She would whip you first to try and get rid of the sins, and then she'd urinate on you. And she was known as the Permanent Spring.
This sounds more like a chapter from 50 Shades of Grey.
Does it?
Well, yeah, whipping, urinating on. I mean, that's all very bondage-based activity.
It wasn't uncommon to use urine in a weird medical way, though, was it? In around that time in the 17th century, so
No.
they had people who would smell or look at the colour or even sometimes the flavour of people's urine in order to diagnose disease. And they
Yeah.
had, those colour wheels you get. They had a urine wheel.
Like Pantone.
Yeah, exactly. And it had 20 different colours of urine around the edge of it.
20 Shades of Pee.
And so, and it was all to do with the humours and whether your 4 humours were in order.
But I think that would work. I think if your urine tasted sweet, then you might be diabetic.
That's how they used to do
yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, doctors used to diagnose you
He
that
was
way.
called Thomas Willis, the man who discovered it, and it was in 1674. He said that diabetic people's urine was wonderfully sweet, as if it were imbued with honey or sugar. And it was called Willis's disease for a long time, diabetes, because of him discovering it.
Pliny said that you could use urine for a whole bunch of ailments, but stale urine mixed with ash could be rubbed on your baby for nappy rash, which sounds just like a really unpleasant way to be entering the world.
I think there's like a Mayan tablet or something like that says, this is about the patient. If all else fails, have him remove one sandal, urinate in it, and drink the urine. And this was if everything else that the doctor prescribed didn't work, then that was the last thing you should try.
Aren't sandals, are they full of holes?
Good point.
I don't
Maybe
understand
that's
how
so
I
that
would
you don't-
retain liquid in
Yeah.
my sandals.
So actually drinking urine has been thought by quacks for centuries as being a way of, solving any problems that you have. I think we mentioned it on QI, and we have a website address that we bought called drinkmyurine.co.uk. And if you go onto that, then it takes you to the QI website. But what that means is, because we still own it, all of the QI.com URLs can also be written as drinkmyurine.co.uk. So if you go onto drinkmyurine.co.uk/podcast, you'll find our podcast page.
Speaking of drinking urine, the Sami people of Scandinavia, northern Scandinavia, people thought for ages that they would feed magic mushrooms to their reindeer and then they would drink their reindeer's
I've heard
urine.
that.
Yeah. So, and then they get high off magic mushrooms, but without getting the poisonous effect and vomiting, which is what happens if you eat them directly, if you eat too much. And then this anthropologist came along and debunked this whole thing and said the Sami people do not drink reindeer urine. And then he went and interviewed a Sami person. So he wrote a whole book about how they don't.
Yeah.
And then he met some Sami people and they were like, yeah, we do this all the time.
Oh, no.
So he had to write another book saying, actually,
Oh, no.
they do it.
I read a thing about the Koryak people in Siberia. They would take a sort of hallucinogenic psychedelic mushroom, and the mushroom would send them insane into like a beautiful psychedelic thing. The problem was it's quite expensive, and so it has a thing in it where when you urinate, it doesn't dilute the hallucinogenic in it, and
Right.
so basically it comes out just as strong, just slightly diluted from the initial thing that you're taking. So the people who couldn't afford to take the mushroom would buy the urine off the people who just had a trip, so that they could then have that.
Soviet Russia, they used to, if you had chewing gum, you would chew it until you didn't have the taste anymore, and then you'd pass that on to someone else to have the remnants of the
Really?
taste. Yeah.
Why?
Because it was so rare.
But if there was no taste left.
Yeah, but I think I'm right in saying your mouth kind of gets used to the taste, so there's still some left.
It does, and that's why there's always room for pudding. It's called sensory specific satiety, SSS,
Yeah.
and if you are really full of your main course, you think, oh, I can't eat any more of this, whatever it is you're having, risotto. But then someone says, hey, how about a profiterole? Your taste buds perk up and you think, oh, wait, maybe I can squeeze in a bit more food because it's a different flavour.
It's a different flavour, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I got a good urine fact.
Go on.
Turns out that we urinate 50% more than we drink per day.
How can that
Really?
be?
That's what I thought.
Is it because you're breathing in water vapour?
No, it's because all the foods that get broken down, there's lots of water in foods.
Oh,
there's lots
of course.
yeah.
Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is good. Well done.
Thanks. You all thought it was going to be dubious. You all thought it was going to be because we are half Yetis, and Yetis have the ability to...
The first obscenity law in England was in 1663 when poet Sir Charles Sedley got too drunk, shouted blasphemous things from a balcony in Covent Garden and urinated on the crowd below.
Oh.
And that was also the last law written in Norman French in the UK.
Wow.
Was it?
Yeah.
That's a nice coincidence.
We should get a balcony. Sigmund Freud viewed urinating in public as a sign of strong subconscious ambition.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and if that's true, Central London on a Friday night is one of the most ambitious places in the world. I've got one more thing about urine.
Yeah, go on.
So, which do you want? Do you want the one about rabbits or the one about the future?
Oh, the future.
The future.
So, as well as these doctors who were genuinely trying to work out how you could use urine to diagnose disease, there were people who practiced the art of uromancy, which is
Okay.
the art of telling the future using urine. And they were also known as piss prophets, a bit more vulgarly. But they took omens from different signs in it. So some people took omens from the colour of the client's urine or from its taste, or they read the bubbles immediately after it hit the bowl. So you would have to wee in the divination bowl, and if there were large bubbles spread out, you were about to come into money. If there were small bubbles packed together, it would be illness or someone you loved would die.
No. Someone would die just because I peed bubbles.
Small packed together bubbles, yes. So be
Christ.
careful. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah, and it was very common in the 17th century. A lot of people slagged them off. Ben Jonson said that they were turdy-facey, nasty-patey, lousy farticle rogues.
Famously mature man.
So this lady, Dorothy Harling, she was thought to have been someone who was predicted in the Book of Revelations. There were a lot of these people called French prophets who came over. They were Huguenots, and they claimed that they were, prophets from the Bible. But I just really like prophets. I like, people who think that they're gods or...
Yeah.
But I love this guy. There was a guy called Cooper. I can't remember his first name. And he was living in London. He was unemployed. And some of his friends, some of his Indian friends told him that he looked and moved just like an ancient Indian goddess. And he thought, oh, well, that sounds quite good. Anyway, so he then went to Gujarat. And he claimed to be this ancient goddess in human form, and now he lives in a holy saffron robe, living among 80 eunuchs.
Why didn't he say to his friends, okay, great, whatever, let's have another drink? Who takes their friends' comments on how they look that seriously?
Yeah, but that's
Every
pretty
time
good.
I saw my mum, I'd believe I was beautiful if that was the case. Oh, you are beautiful, Anna, don't I? Oh, thanks, guys.
Okay, time for fact number 2, and that is you, Chazinski.
So my fact is that despite the fact that homosexuality is completely illegal in the South Sudan, a woman can have a female husband and a child can have a female father.
Oh, how does that work?
So it makes sense because it's true actually across parts of East Africa in various tribes, but one of the tribes is the Nuer tribe. And if a woman is infertile, it's a way of her being able to continue her family line. So this infertile woman has a father who wants to pass on property to a son or a grandson.
Right.
So the infertile woman marries another woman, and then this other woman has a secret lover whom she has some sex with, gets pregnant, and then she has a child by that man, but that child is officially the child of the infertile woman and the other woman.
Wow.
And then everything, like legal, societal, cultural rights, everything like that, it's all the same as if they were a normal husband and wife marriage.
Sure.
It's openly accepted that that's what's done, and it's enshrined in law. And there's this other weird thing as well, which is I think this is another tribe in Kenya. It's the Kuria tribe, which is called daughter-in-law marriage.
Wait,
where
the Courier tribe,
the Kuria tribe, yeah,
where they make the font, right?
Yes, indeed,
Yeah.
and they just carry stuff back and forth.
That's what I thought, yeah, they were delivering stuff.
Yeah, they deliver babies. No, the Kuria, Kuria tribe. And they have this thing called daughter-in-law marriage, where an infertile woman marries another woman. and then she gives as a wife the other woman to her fictitious son. So this woman doesn't have any sons, but she marries a woman and then donates that woman to her made-up son.
Right.
And so that woman now counts as her daughter-in-law, and then that woman gets pregnant, and then that counts as her grandchild. It's a very confusing system.
So it's like having your friend marry your imaginary friend.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Because having a daughter-in-law is a sign of status in certain African tribes, and again confers certain cultural.
Brilliant systems
Oh my
to get
God.
around
Pretty great.
various problems if you can't have children yourself, or but you want to keep a family line going. It's
Yeah.
ingenious.
Yeah.
There are lots of women in Albania who live as men, aren't there?
Yeah, is it a Canoon law or something like that?
I think so, yeah. But actually, I say there are lots. There are very few now because it's a very old custom, and most of the remaining ones are in their 70s, 80s, or even 90s. So, but they simply live as men. So they dress as men, they live as men.
And do they pretend that they are men, or does everyone know that they're women, but they
Everyone
just say...
knows that they're a woman, but they have the status of a man.
Yeah, all you have to do is dress as the man, and then people accept that you are.
Yeah.
And that's just the way society works.
You don't
And then
marry.
You're not allowed to marry, and you're known as a sworn virgin, I think.
That's right. Yeah. But you are officially a man, even though you're a celibate man. You won't marry a woman. But
Okay.
you are nonetheless.
There is
Okay.
the Canoon law is in Albania. Andy says it's a very old-fashioned one, but I think there's one other thing. If I'm right, it's the same thing where if your wife is having sex with another guy, you're allowed to kill them, but you have to kill them both at the same time with one bullet, and they have to be in the act at the time.
Wow.
Whoa.
Could you guys just line up there, please? Stand still.
That's a needlessly complicated workaround. You could just say you're not allowed to murder anyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a loophole, isn't it?
It is a loophole. It almost sounds as if it happened once and they went, oh no, it's legal. Did you not read the small print? In France, you can marry dead people,
Okay.
and
Great.
it's called posthumous marriage. And the idea is that, say, I have a fiancée and she's going to inherit half of what I own, but then I die, legally she'd have no right to it, so they do the marriage after I've died, and then she legally is part of that
Right.
family and owns owns all of the stuff.
That makes sense.
These are all ingenious solutions to the natural problems of life, and how it gets in the way of
Well,
stability.
all the societal problems of life, mainly in the case of gender discrimination, and it's quite funny. The idea is they really miss the point that women go to the lawmakers and say, or the gay people in Africa, and say, we're really sick of this discrimination. And the lawmakers go, okay, we'll let you pretend to be a man. Does that solve the problem? It's like
If the suffragettes,
no, not really.
If the suffragettes had gone down that road, then we'd be living in 100% male Britain today.
Yeah.
All of you have the legal right to be men.
You were talking about France, a French
Yeah,
wedding
I was.
custom in the Auvergne region in certain villages. It's called La Rôtie. So they have the wedding, and then the married couple then go off to their bedchamber, and then it's traditional for the wedding guest to interrupt their bedchamber in the middle of the night, overturn their bedchamber, and then they fill up a chamber pot with all the leftover wine, champagne, food, sometimes toilet paper, apparently tampons soaked in tomato sauce, and they force the bride and groom to drink the contents of this chamber pot as a wedding ritual. It's supposed to signify the intimacy of their future lives together or something.
Wow.
Yeah, romantic, right? What a great way to ruin someone's wedding night. I'm definitely going to start doing that to my friends.
They also fill it with champagne and chocolate sometimes, which symbolises urine and feces.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a worry about champagne representing urine because it has lots of bubbles in it, and presumably everyone's just going to die.
Yeah, small packed together bubbles as well. Yeah.
There's another wedding ritual, and I really want the verification of it. So if anyone belongs to the Tidong tribe in Borneo who's listening to this podcast or who knows of them, apparently if you get married in this tribe, you're not allowed to urinate or defecate or wash for 3 days after you get married. And it's just on this one person's blog who went and hung out with the Tidong tribe, but I couldn't find reference to it anywhere else. So 3 days you have to hold it in.
That's amazing.
There is
I
a bit of
admire
a problem
that.
with this, Anna, because if the Tidong tribe in Borneo in the middle of the jungle are listening, how are they going to tell you because you're not on Twitter?
That's a good point. I forgot that's the only way they communicate.
Also, holding it in for 3 days just after a wedding is tough.
Yeah.
Because you drink a lot at a wedding.
That's so true. And it's going to be the most unsavory after those 3 days. It's the least romantic way again to end them, is you both fighting your way to the toilet for an explosive session. Anyway.
Have you heard of bride pie?
No.
Sounds...
This is an English wedding tradition. So you have wedding cake, everyone knows about that, but Traditionally, in the 17th, 18th centuries, around that time, you would also have bride pie. And this is a savoury dish, and it had lots of little things in it, like cock's combs, you know those, from a cockerel, or lamb's testicles, or goose giblets.
This sounds like a very unsavoury pie to me.
There was one recipe for a bride pie in Robert May's book, The Accomplished Cook, which included veal sweetbreads, ox tongues, a pint of oysters, bacon, chestnuts, lemon juice, pickled berries, wine, a live snake for entertainment purposes, more oysters, and an onion.
I always find my pies aren't entertaining.
Dear Melton Mowbray, I was most disappointed on getting to the end of my pie to find you had left out the live snake. Please, can you rectify this situation?
Marriages in Sudan. Do you remember that famous guy who married a goat?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He had to, didn't he? He was compelled to by law.
He was caught in
The act.
flagrante delicto, and they said, well, in order to preserve the honour of the goat who was called Rose, he had to marry her. And Rose unfortunately died about a year later after she swallowed a plastic bag.
How convenient for the man.
In India, people sometimes marry trees, don't they?
Do they?
Yeah.
Why would you marry a tree?
It's an astrological thing. So in certain parts of India, you are Manglik if you're born on a certain day of the month, which means that astrologically you have bad luck. And in marriage, it means that you'll likely be married to a lot of different husbands. Either they'll die or you'll get divorced. And the way to counterbalance that is in a ceremony which is called Ark Viva or Kum Viva, where you marry a tree or an urn, and that's your first marriage. And so that means, and you do the full ceremony, and that means you've done marriage number 1. Now you can do marriage number 2. And I think the former Miss World of 1990
was a tree. 1996.
Yeah.
She did this in, I think, 2003 or 2004. Because she was very superstitious, and she was born under this sign. And the idea is that after you get married, you then chop down the tree or smash the urn.
Not to be recommended with genuine
I
husbands.
feel bad for the tree, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine the tree's delight. You're going to marry a beautiful woman. Really? It's the wedding night. I'm so excited. She's the guy with the axe approaching.
Okay, time for fact number 3, and that is my fact. My fact this week, it's the discovery that Tommy Flowers, the man who was responsible for the first ever computer, you could call it, Colossus, which was designed during World War II, it's that when they were pushing forward the idea that the Colossus should be made, it kept blowing up because it was made of 1,500 different valves, kept blowing up every time they turned it on, and they said this can't work, and he was convinced it could work. He worked out that by turning it on and off, that's what was blowing it up. So the first ever bit of IT advice was to not turn it off, then turn it back on again.
That's brilliant.
That's really funny.
So this was Tommy Flowers.
Tommy Flowers, yeah. Tommy Flowers used to work for the post office. So he designed this thing. He put it forward. They said no to it. After they said no to it, he solved the problem. And then they said no to it again because it would just take up too much space and it was going to take a year to make. So he just went ahead with it anyway as a kind of half-secret project, which is an amazing half-secret project to have because it was the size of a room in Bletchley. I don't know how you hide that. I don't know.
Yeah, in Bletchley, among people whose job it is to find out any secrets you might be hiding.
It's literally the worst place in the world to try and keep a secret. That's such a good point.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, we found the oldest computer ever, well, what's always cited as the oldest computer ever, was only discovered in, I think it was 1902? I want to say, anyway, early 20th century, was that ancient Greek computer from the 2nd century BC, which is called
The Antikythera.
The Antikythera, yeah.
Is that definitely a computer, do we think?
Everyone always refers to it as a computer, so it's an unbelievably complex system of cogs, which, if you spin a handle on it, which correctly show you the rotation of all the planets that have been discovered at the time, which was 5 planets, I think, and could predict a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, and they didn't make anything nearly as complicated as that for another 1,500 years after it.
The most, if anyone listening to this is thinking, oh, I'll look into that later, Google it right now while you remember.
Or maybe after the show.
Just press pause and check it out because it's the most extraordinary looking item and it's so out of place and time. That's the thing. You look at it and it's like all those books that used to come out back in the 70s by Eric von Daniken and stuff saying, oh, there were ancient batteries and stuff, and you look at it and you go, no, of course not. This is completely falsified. This is the real deal. This is a thing that just is so complicated.
It's amazing.
It's insane.
I'm calling it. I think that's a computer.
The word computer used to refer to someone who just worked out when Easter was.
Really?
Yeah,
amazing.
they would have a monk whose job it was to work out all the dates and all the feasts and stuff like that. Obviously, Easter being the main one, and they were called computers.
If you tried turning him off and then turning him back on again.
I read that the Colossus was actually dismantled. A bunch of them were dismantled. I think 8 of the 10, and all of the parts that made it up went into the spares of post office systems again.
Really?
So a large
Hey.
part, and apparently those are still being used today. So a large part of the postal service is still being used using parts from Colossus, the very first computer.
That
Yeah,
explains
that's
a lot.
A couple of years ago at a QI recording, we had some charity guests, and one of the people I met there was he ran the computers which control a lot of trains all over the UK, and he said they run on every system that you can imagine. There are still trains running on MS-DOS in Britain today, and there are ones which run on Apples. And when they first built the computing systems, a lot of the levers for the points changing and things like that, they used parts from old RAF planes and levers and things like that. Amazingly cool hodgepodge way of doing it.
The problem with that is, of course, that when you have things going wrong, you don't have the parts to replace them because they're such antiquated
Yeah.
systems. And also, if you had someone who had to fix a computer system and it's written in some old code that no one does anymore, then you're completely screwed.
MS-DOS is going to come back, James.
Is it?
C:// yes.
Do you know who wrote do you remember the opening music for Microsoft when your computer would turn on that music that it would make? It was, like-
do. That one.
it was exactly that, yeah. Do you know who wrote that?
Is it Brian Eno?
Yeah.
No, there wasn't that one actually.
Oh, right.
I couldn't tell which one that one was that James
Yeah.
was doing.
Brian Eno wrote the one that went.
Sounds like him.
He got given a list of about 100 words, descriptive words, saying it needs to be sexy, informative, exciting, ambitious. All these words, and it needs to be in 0.75 seconds or something like that, or 3.4 seconds. And so the great secret of it is that he wrote it on a Mac.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Really?
The first laptop was sold in 1982. They were selling them door to door. They were priced around $20,000 in today's money, so pretty expensive things. They were pretty big, about £11. But the main problem, the reason people didn't want to buy them, is because they had a keyboard on them. And like big executives who worked in offices thought that typing stuff was something that would be done by secretaries, not by themselves.
Wow.
And so they really resisted having anything that had a keyboard on it.
That's
Wow.
really
As
funny.
a status indicator.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Computers have changed quite a lot. I was reading in the news just this week, they have a supercomputer that read 100,000 scientific papers in 2 hours and cross-referenced all of them against each other and found completely new types of biology.
Whoa!
I know.
Really?
It's quite complicated to explain what it was, but it was something like they were looking for a specific compound and they looked for mentions of it in all these 100,000 papers and cross-referenced them against each other, and they found new types of these compounds that they didn't know existed before,
That's
or something like
incredible.
that anyway.
That's absolutely unbelievable.
I know.
I can't really work out what it means, I have
No,
to
it's
say.
I'll post it on my Twitter feed if people want to read that, but it's absolutely amazing.
So I was looking into code breaking during World War II. The guy who came up with Enigma, Arthur Scherbius, didn't know what he'd come up with. He died in 1929 in a carriage accident, I think, before he knew that it was being put to that kind of use. But he also invented the electric pillow.
Sorry, what's an electric
Well,
pillow?
I assume so. He patented a way of transmitting heat through various objects, and so I think it's like an electric blanket,
Oh,
but
okay,
just to
so
keep
it's
your
a-
head really hot.
That's
I don't know why
really
you'd
funny.
want that,
Because
actually.
that's the one problem, isn't it? That pillows get too hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. You turn the pillow over and the other side's even hotter.
Okay, time for our final fact of the show, and that is Andy Murray.
Hello, my fact is that a couple of botanists from Kew Gardens recently checked a £1.29 bag of porcini mushrooms from the supermarket, and they found 3 species which were previously unknown to science.
That's really cool.
Really
Yeah.
good.
They thought they'd run it through a DNA sequencer.
As you
and-
do.
Yeah.
Do they do that before they eat all of their meals?
It's a bit like horse meat and lasagna kind of thing, is it? Like they thought they were porcini, but actually
No, it's
they were
like
different.
unicorn lasagna.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give
That's
it a go.
so weird. So does that mean we're missing them all because they just
Probably.
happen to be botanists?
We've all probably eaten mushrooms
New
that
species.
are completely unknown to science. So they got to name them, which is cool. You don't often get to name 3 new species. So
What did they call them?
They called them Latin names, which translate as white beef liver, delicious cattle liver fungus, and the third one just means edible.
Ran out of ideas.
One of the people who has a lot of animals named after them who's alive, there's an explorer in Venezuela called Charles Brewer Carayas, and he has a lot of animals attributed to him, partially because in Venezuela there's so many undiscovered species that any time he goes to a new one of the tabletop mountains, he just discovers tons of new species. It's so diverse up there as well. They say that if you're on top of one of these tabletop mountains, if you have 2 bodies of water, literally meters apart from each other, the fish inside this one will be a complete different species to the fish inside of the one sitting beside it. That's how varied and...
So, are you talking about the Andes, did you say? Because the orchids that are in the Andes, the Ecuadorian Andes, they have more orchids than anywhere else on the planet that are endemic, only found there. And one botanist called Lou Jost found 4 new species of orchid in a single day, all hidden in the same patch of moss.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
There was a new species of chameleon found in Tanzania, and it was found after a snake spat out a still undigested specimen in the feet of a British scientist.
What?
Wow.
So there's a snake there. He's like, oh no, there's a snake, and then it sort of vomits up a chameleon and goes, oh, that's a new one. I haven't seen that before.
Incredible.
That's like that happens all the time, it seems, to these sort of these zoologists and stuff. There was the guy who discovered a new species of monkey that fell into his notebook.
Oh, yeah.
No, it wasn't a monkey. It was a new species of frog.
Yeah,
the
frog.
dart frog. It fell into his notebook
great.
as he was
Did he press
cataloguing.
it like a flower? Just snap it shut. Leave it for 3 days and then show it to my teacher. My favourite species discovery is a really exciting discovery in 2010 of a species called the Australopithecus sediba, which is a type of hominid, a new type of hominid they found. And basically this guy, Lee Berger, is a paleoanthropologist, and he was in South Africa on an archaeological dig looking for fossils and new species. So while he was doing this, his 9-year-old son nearby, Matthew, was playing with the dog and tripped over a clavicle and jawbone, which turned out belonged to a new species of hominid, and brought it back to his dad, who was obviously like, shut up, son, I'm busy now. Go away, come back later. Turned out he discovered a new human, basically.
That's incredible. Okay, so I really like this. We don't know for sure how many species of gerbil there are.
Oh, that's great.
We know of 95. But I think no one's properly looked into it. Like with so many species, animals, we have no idea how many there are. Among the 95 known species of gerbil are Wagner's gerbil, as well as Cheesemans, the South African hairy-footed, Swarthies, Pleasant, Burtons, Julians, Vivacious, and Riggenbachs.
Pleasant.
Swarthies
I like
gerbil.
pleasant gerbil.
Pleasant
Yeah,
gerbil,
I don't believe such a thing exists. Gerbils. I think I feel about gerbils like you feel about mushrooms.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Wouldn't want them on a pizza.
Not too many of them, no.
They have an indefinable aura of death around them.
Is that a fact?
No, I mean, that's what James thinks about mushrooms.
Oh, right. Okay, got it. On the subject of gerbils, finding stuff in food, there was a guy in Kidlington, which is quite near where I'm from, in Oxfordshire recently, who bought online from Tesco's a pack of Hovis sliced bread, and there's just the best picture of it. So he found a whole mouse inside the bread, and it was a sort of... It looks like something fossilized, but it's this complete mouse, and it took him about 4 slices of bread, but without a tail, and he'd already eaten some. So it was the genuine, I found half a maggot in my food. Premier Foods, who made the bread, admitted it had failed to ensure all stages of food production were protected against contamination.
Wow.
The Food Standards Authority allows up to 20 maggots per 100 grams of mushrooms before it's a problem, and 75 mites.
Wait, say that again? 20
maggots per 100 grams of mushrooms.
That's quite a lot.
Is okay. It is quite a lot, isn't it, for 100 grams, which isn't very much.
I suppose dried mushrooms are very light, so 100 grams is quite a lot.
It's not dried, it's drained.
Oh, okay.
So just normal mushrooms.
There's a species of mushroom named recently called Phallus drewsii, and that was named after a guy called Bob Drews. And obviously phallus because it's shaped like a penis, and so this basically is named Bob Drews' penis. Is the name of the is the name of the thing.
Why
And
does someone really not like Bob Drews?
No, it was in his honour. They were friends of his, and he said in an interview with a newspaper, he said, "I am utterly delighted. The funny thing is that it is..." I'm sorry. What? This is going to go wrong.
No.
He said, "I am utterly delighted. The funny thing is that it is the second smallest known mushroom." I can't do this.
Do it.
Do you need someone else to read it out for
I think
you?
I might do it. Sorry, Anna has to read this because I keep laughing.
Bob Drew said, "I am utterly delighted. The funny thing is that it's the second smallest known mushroom in this genus, and it grows sideways, almost limp." Okay, there you go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but he was delighted that it was named after him. It also emits a foul odour and attracts flies.
Well, I understand why I'm so pleased.
The mushroom, on the other hand,
Isn't there a rose named after June Whitfield?
oh yeah.
In the catalogue description it says it's good in a bed but best up against a wall.
Okay, that's it. That's all of our facts. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. If you want to get in contact with any of us, you can do so via the Twitter account at QI Podcast, which we are all logged into except for Anna. So you can send us whatever you think, and we'll answer it. Otherwise, you can get us on our individual Twitter handles. I'm on at Schreiberland, James.
At egg-shaped.
Andy.
At Andrew Hunter M.
The tree.
At tree.
5 E's at the end there. And Anna.
You can email podcast@qi.com.
Yes. Okay. And so, yeah, that's it. We'll be back again next week. If you go to drinkmyurine.co.uk/podcast, you can see all the previous episodes for No Such Thing as a Fish. And we'll be back again next week with another collection of our 4 favorite things that we found out from the past 7 days. Okay. See you then. Goodbye.